Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're unpacking something that every single world traveler should really understand: what's actually inside an international travel medical policy. We're going to use the USAWay Major Medical Plan as our guide to see how you can stay protected when you're far from home. Let's jump right in.
Okay, so picture this. You've been saving, you've been planning, and that dream trip is finally on the calendar. Whether it's kicking back on a beautiful beach or hiking through ancient ruins, the excitement is just palpable. It feels like the adventure of a lifetime. And then, that brings us to the big practical question, right? In the middle of all that daydreaming, it is so easy to forget that, well, things can happen. A sudden illness, an unexpected accident. That stuff is definitely not on the itinerary, but having a plan for it is what separates a smart traveler from, well, a stressed out one. So, let's get right into it and tackle that what-if scenario head-on. Look, I know building a safety net isn't the most glamorous part of travel planning, but it is so crucial. It's the one thing that can keep a simple little mishap from spiraling into a full-blown crisis.
And that's exactly where a policy like this comes into play. So let's peel back the layers and take a look at the core medical benefits. This is the real heart of your protection when you're traveling abroad.
Wow, okay, right off the bat, you see this massive number, $5 million. For most travelers, so anyone up to age 69, this is your maximum benefit. You can think of it as your ultimate financial backstop for a really serious medical emergency. It's designed to handle those huge hospital bills and treatment costs you hear about.
Next up is a benefit that can be an absolute literal lifesaver: medical evacuation. I mean, think about it. If you get seriously sick or injured somewhere that doesn't have the right medical care, this provides up to $250,000 to get you to a place that does, or even to get you all the way back home. Trying to pay for that out of pocket, we are talking tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's a huge deal. So what does that big benefit actually pay for? Well, it's the core stuff you'd need in a crisis: your hospital stay, the doctor's services, ambulance rides, and even prescription drugs up to a limit. It also covers repatriation, which, is something you hope is never, ever needed, but it's incredibly important for a family in an absolute worst-case scenario.
Okay, so a major medical crisis is one thing, but what about all the other little headaches that can pop up when you travel? Let's take a look at how a policy like this handles those common problems that happen outside of the ER.
This is where you get some extra peace of mind. The policy can cover things like having to cancel your trip for a really serious reason, or needing to fly home suddenly for a family emergency. And yes, it even helps with the one we all fear: completely lost luggage. It's also really worth pointing out the war and terrorism coverage. That's an important layer of security in today's world.
Of course, you're not traveling just to sit in a cafe, right? You're going to be out there doing things. And that brings up a huge question I hear all the time. What about my activities? Am I covered if I want to go snorkeling? Or maybe try something a little more adventurous?
Okay, this is a really key distinction. On the left, you've got a list of activities that are just included in the standard plan, things like snorkeling or going for a hike. But for the more adventurous stuff, on the right, like skiing or scuba diving, you're going to need to get an optional add-on, which is called a hazardous sports rider.
And if you do decide to get that rider, what does it give you?
Well, it provides up to $250,000 in coverage for medical expenses that come from those specific sports.
So the takeaway here is super simple. You need to know what you plan to do on your trip and make sure your coverage actually matches your adventure level.
All right, now we're at the part that everybody should pay really close attention to with any insurance policy: the fine print. Seriously, understanding what is not covered is every bit as important as knowing what is. So let's look at the key limitations.
And here it is. This is one of the most important definitions in the whole policy: the pre-existing condition. So what does it mean? In simple terms, it's any condition you got treatment for or even just had symptoms of in the 12 months right before your coverage started. This is a very standard but very significant exclusion.
Another really key limitation is age. Remember that $5 million maximum benefit we saw? Well, that doesn't apply to everyone. As you can see here, the benefit amount drops quite a bit for travelers once they turn 70, and it keeps on decreasing from there. This is an absolutely critical factor for senior travelers to keep in mind.
So on top of pre-existing conditions, there are other important things the policy won't cover. We're talking about routine care, like a general checkup, most dental work, new glasses, that kind of thing. It also doesn't cover pregnancy and childbirth or any elective surgeries. You got to remember, this insurance is designed for unforeseen emergencies, not for your planned or general healthcare needs.
And finally, this is a disclaimer you just cannot miss. The policy says it very clearly. It is not ACA compliant. What that means is this is temporary medical insurance just for travel. It's not a substitute for the comprehensive long-term health plan you're required to have as a U.S. resident. It serves a completely different purpose.
So after breaking all of this down, it really comes back to this one question. Understanding the coverage, the perks, and especially the limitations is the only way you can know the answer for yourself. By really thinking about your personal health, your destination, and what you're planning to do, you can decide if this is the right safety net to bring along on your next global adventure.